So gents, why you should dress like James Bond in your 30s? So here's the thing, a 22-year-old trying to dress like James Bond looks ridiculous. A man who is in his 30s and 40s, however, applying the same principles looks like a man who's finally stepped into himself. The blueprint was never built for boys. The James Bond blueprint was never built for young men. It was built for men who have spent their 20s figuring it out, falling on their face a few times and earning the right to own something this deliberate. The problem isn't that you can't afford this particular look. The problem is that most men in your bracket, I'm talking your age bracket, so we're talking 30s and 40s, haven't given themselves permission to be him yet, to dress like James Bond yet. And I'm telling you now, if you're in your 30s and your 40s and you spent your 20s figuring fucking life out and you've filled yourself into the man that you are, this video is giving you permission. So here's the deal. If you think about it, Bond has been the most consistent masculine style reference for over 60 years. 6 different actors, 6 different decades, and the principles haven't changed. But here's what most people miss. Bond was never written as a young man. If you actually go back into the books themselves, Bond was written as a man who's at the height of his capability. He has the experience, the composure, the clarity. That's why a 22-year-old wearing a Bond suit looks like he's wearing his dad's clothes, okay? The blueprint requires a man who has actually lived something. By your 30s, you just haven't claimed it yet. So listen, I'm gonna walk you through 10 principles of Bond's style and exactly what each one was built for the man you've actually become, not the boy you used to be. By the end of this video, you'll know how to start applying them, not as someone aspiring upward, but as someone finally claiming what's already yours. So gents, here's the thing. Bond was never built for boys. This is a truth that actually nobody says out loud. James Bond was never written to be a young man. Every version of the character, from Connery to Craig, has been a man with mileage, a man who has seen things, done things, made mistakes, and come out the other side with a sense of who he actually is. This is why a 22-year-old trying to dress like Bond looks like a kid playing dress up. Style without lived experience is a costume. The audience can feel the difference instantly, but you're not 22 anymore. You've earned the experience the archetype requires. The lines on your face, the way you hold yourself, the fact that you don't need to explain yourself, that's what makes this blueprint actually work. That's what makes dressing like James Bond in your 30s and 40s actually work. Bond is the archetype for the man who has done his 20s. You've done yours. The only thing standing between you and the blueprint is your permission to claim it. So here's the thing. The suit is the foundation, not the exception. The first principle of Bond's style is that the suit is not reserved for special occasions. It's his default, the standard, the baseline of how he shows up in the world. He wears a suit to a dinner, to a casino, to a meeting, to a fight. Most men in our bracket, 30s and 40s, will still treat the suit as the exception, something they pull out for a wedding or an interview, then put it back in the cupboard, not because they can't afford to wear one, more often because they haven't given themselves permission to show up at that level every day. I mean, think about how we used to dress. Guys used to walk out the house in a 3-piece suit. Now, I'm not necessarily saying you need to do that for practicality standpoint, but if you really want to take yourself seriously and you want to dress like the Bond archetype, then the suit is the foundation, okay, not the exception. Bond's lesson is this: tailoring isn't formal, it's foundational. And the moment you decide the suit or the structured tailored silhouette is your standard rather than your exception, the way that you carry yourself changes. The clothes haven't done that, the decision has. There's something about Bond, specifically restraint, which is the hallmark of a man who has nothing to prove. Bond has nothing to prove, right? He walks into a room, he never overdresses, he doesn't wear loud pattern, doesn't have aggressive accessories. Mind you, I do, but that's my personality and character. No statement pieces. The watch is significant but understated. The tie is precise but never dominant. Nothing is competing with the man. And if you think about it, this is the exact opposite of how a 22-year-old dresses. A 22-year-old will wear a logo, will chase the trend, the bright color, anything that gets attention. You haven't yet developed the security to dress quietly, but you have it now. You've stopped needing to be seen and started wanting to be respected. You don't need the brand on display. You don't need the loudest piece in the room. Restraint is available to you as a 30 and 40-year-old man that it isn't available to a younger man. The question is whether you're going to keep performing for the version of you that needed validation or finally dress as the man who doesn't. One of the core elements of Bond's archetype, of his style archetype, is that a tight palette is built on self-knowledge. Bond doesn't have a wide color range, okay? Navy, charcoal, black, white, the occasional gray. a muted blue or olive when he's off duty. That's the whole palette. In your 20s, you've accumulated a pile of clothes built up through trial and error, impulse buys, trends you got swept up in. That's normal. That's how it should be at 22, to be honest. But when you're in your 30s and your 40s, you're past that now. You know what works on you. You know what doesn't. You've worn enough of the wrong things to trust your judgment on the right ones. A tight palette is what self-knowledge looks like in a wardrobe. You have the self-knowledge already. The only thing left is commit to dressing like you have it. If you're still unsure about the color palette, I have built a tool, the Color Palette Authority. The link is in the description below. It'll help you figure out what color palette you should be wearing. So fit is everything, and you've never been positioned for it. Bond's suit worked because of the fit, not price. Cut precisely to the body, clean across the chest, suppressed at the waist. The shoulder line is sitting exactly where it should. I mean, here's the truth, gents. You can afford the tailor. You probably always could. What stopped you wasn't necessarily budget. It was the belief that a tailor is for someone else. Older, more established, more distinguished, more serious, more worthy. That belief is the only thing keeping you in off-the-rack clothing that doesn't quite work. If you take one lesson from this presentation, from this video, take this one. The man who hasn't found a tailor yet is leaving the single biggest style upgrade of his life on the table. Not because of money, but because of permission. Fit isn't a finishing touch. It's the entire game. And the only thing standing between you and it is the decision to walk into the appointment. One of the core elements about Bond too is the casual side. It's done with the same standard. Bond isn't only a suited man. He wears polos, knitwear, casual trousers, but the principles never change. Tight palette, restrained, always well fitted, always intentional. The collapse most men in your bracket make is on the weekend. The week is sharp. The weekend, however, is a graphic tee and joggers, as if how you dress only matters when someone important is watching. Bond doesn't operate this way. His casual is still intentional because his identity doesn't switch off when the occasion changes. His identity doesn't switch off on the weekend. The standard a man holds himself to in private is the truer signal than the one he holds himself to in public. You need to carry your standard everywhere, not because anyone is watching, but because you've decided who you are. You've decided to dress like Bond, and that's what Bond does. One of Bond's core elements, core pieces, is the watch. One statement, carefully chosen. Bond wears one piece of jewelry. It's a watch. That's it. Significant, but never loud. Something a man would buy once and wear forever. Now, let's be honest, you've probably already bought the watch or you're thinking about it. What you might not have done is edited everything else around it. The bracelets, the chains, the accessories that compete with it for attention. A man in his 30s who's still stacking, is still trying to prove something he doesn't need to prove anymore. And when I say a man who's still stacking, we're talking about stacking loads of bracelets around the watch, jewelry, loud earrings, all that sort of stuff, right? Like if you're going to be wearing the timepiece and you're going for that Bond archetype, then you don't need to have the rest of the accessories, okay? A watch on a man wearing nothing else means everything. A watch on a man wearing 5 other things means nothing. The piece you've invested in deserves to be the only one. Give it space to do its job. So grooming, the layer that most men refuse to take seriously. I've spoken about this quite a lot, and when you get into your 30s and 40s, this is really important. Bond's hair, and if you look at Bond and his grooming routine, like his hair is always deliberate. His face is either cleanly shaven or it carries a slight stubble or maintained stubble. His skin looks like the skin of a man who looks after himself. He's got a good skincare routine. Nothing is left to chance. Most men in their 30s and 40s have invested in the clothes, but still treating grooming as optional, not because they can't afford a barber every 2 weeks, or in my case, twice a week, or even once a week, or a basic skincare routine, because they haven't given themselves permission to take it that seriously. They think it makes them vain. It doesn't. It makes them complete. A sharp jacket and an unmaintained beard is a contradiction. The room reads it. Permission to take grooming seriously is permission to finish the picture you've already started. So listen, now you're in your 30s, now you're in your 40s, and if you've done the work, your body you have now is built for this archetype. Here's something nobody tells you. The Bond silhouette, the broader shoulder, the suppressed waist, the structured chest was designed for a man who has filled out his frame. The 22-year-old hasn't reached that frame yet. He's got many years ahead of him. He's still narrow, still proportioned like a boy. When you're in your 30s and your 40s, you have the body classic tailoring was built around. The shoulders have broadened, the chest has settled, the whole frame is more solid, more grounded. The clothes were designed for the man you are right now. You couldn't have pulled this off at 22. You couldn't have pulled this off at 22, even if you had unlimited budget, but you can pull it off now. The body has arrived, the experience has arrived, the clarity has arrived. The only thing missing is the permission to step into it. So that's it, gents. This is your decade. Step into it. Everything is in place. You have the resources, you have the body, you have the lived experience, you have the clarity about who you are. The only thing standing between you and that Bond blueprint, that Bond archetype, is the decision to claim it. Start here. Build a tight palette of navy, charcoal, white, and gray. Find a tailor and have your wardrobe calibrated to your body. Choose one significant piece, a watch, and edit out the rest. Treat grooming as part of the same project as your wardrobe. Apply the same standard to your casual clothing as your formal clothing. That's the whole blueprint. You've spent your 20s figuring out who you weren't. You don't need another decade to figure out who you are. The man you've already become is waiting for you to dress like him. Bond is just the cleanest archetype ever written for that man. Use him. The 2 free guides linked below will absolutely help with that. But if you're gonna dress like James Bond, you need to claim it. That's it, gents. Get some.